The Treasury conflict is exploding. It's a failure of the establishment. Let's break it down.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about this massive fraud out in Minnesota in the state welfare program. Has been under federal investigation since all the way back in 2022. The president told you, though, this week to look into Somalis who, quote, ripped off that state for billions of dollars. He said they contribute nothing. What exactly are you investigating?
Well, Margaret, to be clear, the initial fraud that was discovered by the IRS, for which I'm the acting commissioner, is discovered by IRS Criminal Investigations Unit. This was not an endogenous thing that the state of Minnesota decided we had to go in and clean up the mess for them, and this is part of the continued cleanup. A lot of money has been transferred from the individuals who committed this fraud, including those who donated to the governor, donated to Representative Omar, and donated to A.G. Ellison. But they've been transferred to something called MBSs. And those are
mortgage-backed security. What do you mean?
Sorry.
Transferred to what?
These are money the Bureau services, and they are wire transfer organizations that are outside the regulated banking system. And that money has gone overseas. And we are tracking that both to the Middle East and to Somalia to see what the uses of that have been.
Okay, but you have no evidence of that money being used to fuel terrorism at this point, which is what some conservative writers are alleging.
That's why it's an investigation. We started it last week. We'll see where it goes. But I can tell you that it's terrible. Representative Omar tried to downplay it. Said, "Oh, it was very, it was very tough to know how this money should be used." Yeah. She was gaslighting the American people.
Well, we'll talk to her.
Yeah, but when you come to this country, you got to learn which side of the road to drive on. You got to learn to stop at stop signs, and you got to learn not to defraud the American people.
Well, there are plenty of criminal behavior from communities well beyond the immigrant community. But we'll talk about this with Representative Omar shortly. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Good.
When you look at the sheer scale of this betrayal, it's honestly hard to wrap your head around it. This is what happens when people treat American generosity like a personal ATM. Investigators are calling it one of the most disgusting exploitations of the public trust in the history of the great North State. While your family was probably counting pennies during those brutal lockdowns, a highly organized syndicate was busy siphoning off hundreds of millions, money that was supposed to put food on the table for hungry kids. This wasn't some clerical error or a paperwork mix-up. This was a calculated, top-down looting of the federal government. Think about that next time you see the bill. That money didn't go to bread lines or school lunches. No, it reportedly paid for shiny luxury cars, international real estate, and sprawling villas overseas. The Feeding Our Future scandal has ripped the mask off a dark world of administrative failure and vultures who saw a crisis as a get-rich-quick scheme. It's an absolute stain on the region's legacy to use the most vulnerable people as a cover for a lifestyle of unearned opulence. Appearing on Face the Nation, Secretary Scott Bessent didn't pull any punches. He went straight for the jugular, accusing Representative Ilhan Omar of running a campaign of psychological manipulation against the American people. Bessent isn't buying the excuses. He argued that Omar, trying to spin this massive fraud as some cultural misunderstanding, is a slap in the face to every person who works a 9-to-5. He flat-out called her rhetoric gaslighting, a calculated move to keep the public from seeing what was really happening. His tone wasn't just clinical, it was cold and completely unmoving. And here's where it gets even uglier. He pointed to a connection that should keep everyone awake at night. Those stolen funds didn't just buy sports cars. They allegedly bought power. We're talking about reports that this money was funneled directly into the campaign coffers of top-tier Minnesota Democrats. It looks like a closed loop of corruption and protection. This isn't a local crime story anymore. It's a national security nightmare where our own tax dollars might be compromising the integrity of our elections and financial systems. The shadows from this investigation are getting longer, and they're stretching all the way to the top floors of the Minnesota state government. Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison are now under a massive microscope. Everyone's asking the same thing. Where was the oversight? For months, critics have been screaming about a pattern of total failure that let this network run wild. But it gets worse. There are allegations that the very leadership supposed to stop this might have actually benefited from the groups now facing federal indictments. The optics here are pure poison. Imagine being a governor or an attorney general and taking donations from people accused of stealing from hungry children. It's a moral disaster. Secretary Bessent has made one thing clear. The new administration isn't going to just look the other way like the last one did. They're coming for the assets, and they're going to dismantle the systems that let this rot set in. The era of getting away with it in Minnesota is over. The day of reckoning is finally on the doorstep. As the Treasury and the FBI turn up the heat, the mission couldn't be clearer. Justice has to be served, and every single cent of that money needs to come back. This isn't just about balance sheets or accounting. It's about the sanctity of the social contract. When you pay your taxes, you're trusting that the money goes to the common good, not to fund some guy's villa in a foreign country. The Trump administration's move to claw back these funds is a loud and clear message to the rest of the world. The United States is no longer a soft target for massive fraud. We're seeing a real shift back to old-school accountability. Sure, our borders are a priority, but protecting our treasury is just as vital. As this investigation gets bigger, the pressure on Omar, Walz, and Ellison is only going to get more intense. The American people aren't asking for transparency, they're demanding it. They want anyone who let this tragedy happen held to the absolute highest standard of the law. No more excuses. Ending.
This report is complete, but the fight is just beginning. Subscribe now to stand with us.